Thank you for the great introduction for Al.
Yes, thank you.
Full disclosure, Al and myself go back quite some time.
Yes.
We did work in broadcasting, and yes, Al spent lots of years at the Calgary Flames. And we've been watching each other's investment journey as Al's been involved in Costa Rica since 2013. And during the breakout room, I thought this would actually be great because everybody asked this, Al, that why don't you talk about how you first got involved in Costa Rica nearly 10 years ago?
Well, sure. Yeah. I'm not sure how that Calgary Flames thing is going to go over with all these people from Edmonton and Vancouver here. But anyway,
we're right across North America. So.
I did work for those guys for over 20 years, actually. So, but yes, I have been investing in Costa Rica for over 10 years, almost 10 years. And actually, when we got started, we did it to farm, Devin, is what we did. I don't know what I was thinking, but we bought acres and acres of farmland, and we actually grew a thing called tequisque and sold it in the local markets. And then that sort of, over time, it just sort of stopped happening, and some things changed, and some of my partners moved on and things like that. And a couple of years ago, when we sort of had COVID beginning, speak Spanish. Hola, amiga. ¿Cómo estás? Anyway, that's Laura saying that. Anyway, so what happened is we traded some land. I had 50 acres in the hills that we were farming, and we were relatively successful with that for several years. But we got into a situation where I had some partners that wanted to develop, and they wanted beachfront. So we found some. I traded some land for cash. And with cash, that turned into some lots, which turned into a larger project. You know how these things go, and it got into more development. So we're in Mystico and all that. So that's sort of how we began. We sort of began, I like Costa Rica because it's got an eco-friendly sort of sustainable ecological feel to it. And we were doing some interesting things there that were sort of following along those lines. And I feel like we still are. So.
Yeah, awesome. And so I just really wanted to make sure it was established that Al has been involved in Central America, specifically Costa Rica, for quite some time. And I obviously, we're talking about the States a little bit later, but Central America right now. And certainly there seems to be a bit of a shift. Obviously, when we're talking about investing international and a lot of people looking for areas where there's lots of sunshine, traditionally it's been the Caribbean and Mexico, but lately, and certainly as we come out of the pandemic, it seems that Central America has been on a lot more people's radar. Why do you feel that is, Al?
Well, I would say, just from my experience, that it's about costs. It's less expensive there. Taxes are low. What you got in Costa Rica right now and some of those other countries, I know Costa Rica the best just because I've been involved there for a while, but they're really encouraging people from North America and Europe to come there. It's almost an industry unto itself. People, gringos coming there to buy property. And by the way, gringo is anybody who's not from there, by the way. So we're all gringos, I found out. Anyway, so people investing in properties there, and it's almost an industry, because if you go down there and do like we're doing and developing, Costa Ricans get employed, people pay taxes, and it's a country that really needs industry. They don't have heavy industry like we do here with oil and forestry and all that kind of thing. It's very small. So they run more on tech. They run more on real estate investing. They run more on development. They run more on manufacturing of electronics and things like that. So.
Awesome. And so we're going to continue to talk a little bit about Central America and then specifically Costa Rica, because that's where Al's area of specialty is. We'll also then move into the developments that Al's company, Cardia Developments, is involved with, Mystico. And then if we have time, so please send the questions, but we'll get to those questions towards the tail end of our time period here. And so I see that a couple have already popped up. And
Cynthia's got one there, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to those in a moment. So one of the first questions, it was the first question that was asked in our breakout room. And so obviously a lot of people are interested mostly in this, is from a standpoint of, how does it work in regards to purchasing in Central America, specifically Costa Rica? What's the process? How did it used to be? How difficult was it at one time? And how has the financial institutions moved forward to try to make this more seamless, based on the experience that you've gone through in the 10 years you've been there?
Well, so I would say in Central America, what you're looking at is really three shining lights of countries that are most easy to do business in and be most safe with your investment. And they're going to be Panama, and it's not in this order, but it's Panama, Belize, and Costa Rica. The rest of them are in different states of, disorganization. There's some political issues in some of the countries, and that creates issues with, the courts. And the one thing I should stress is you're going to find everything to be fairly different down there for the most part than what we are used to up here. Things don't move at the same pace. People have a different idea of how things should work. We've also got a different legal system down there. Having said that, the differences aren't so huge that it's unmaneuverable. So, but when we're talking about Central America, I would say Costa Rica is a great place to invest because the banking system is really in step with what we're doing in North America, as far as anti-money laundering and different, issues that you've got with buying real estate in a place like that. The land titling is very solid. The escrow is all done through American companies or really solid Costa Rican companies. So I think that, low taxes, good prices, I think a favorable climate. I think 5G internet helps a lot because they've done a really good job of that in Costa Rica. And the roads are pretty good there. They got great highways, great highway system, good airports, all that kind of stuff.
So we have seen, you mentioned before in some of our other chats, are some Canadian banks down there. The bank that you're primarily involved with, if you want to share with that. And then I also thought make sure to let people know what the interest rate is because it's a little higher than what we've been used to the last little while.
Well, thanks. There's a lot to talk about. So if I get off track, straighten me back out. But banks, okay. So banks used to be a problem down there. What you'd have to do is generally, the first time I ever bought anything in Costa Rica, I just used my own money because there was no financing for people from outside of the country. If you're not a citizen, they don't want to talk to you. But, since we've had all of the economic challenges we've had in the past couple of years, they've changed a lot of rules in Costa Rica. And one of the things that's happened is that somehow, some way, it's become a lot easier to do local mortgages and builder financing in Costa Rica. And so we're working with a bank. They're called Banco Lafise, Lafise. I can write that in here if you want to look it up. This is a bank that is got American investors, United States, but does its business throughout Central America. And we have a good relationship with them. They've vetted out our properties and they've looked at what we have. And it's just like anywhere else, when you got a down economy, you got uncertainty in the air, people really flock to property and gold and solid investments like that. And what we got here is in Costa Rica is you've got a pretty solid banking system. The properties are well, titled, they're legally done really well. And so we got a lot of people sort of flocking to a place like that to invest money because, low taxes and the price is good and the weather's great. So.
Awesome. The interest rate.
So we can bank down there. Like you can get a bank account there now. You can get a mortgage there. Now, I should say this, Devin, and I apologize that the interest rates are higher there. They're going to be higher than what we're used to. And it's just a cultural difference. Ever since I've been going down there, when I started going down there, interest rates were at about 13%. Now, for example, at Lafise, if you wanted to mortgage a house, you'd have to come up with 20% down. It's 6.5% for the first 3 years. And then it's 8.5% for the following term of the mortgage up to 30 years. So now that mortgage gets approved just like a mortgage here. It gets approved, bank statements, taxes, all that kind of stuff. You would go through the same process, be about 2 weeks by the time you would know, and then you would make the payment. So
we are going to tackle some of these questions now, just as rather than them stack up. So we'll go back to the first one. Cynthia asking, is it direct ownership? What's the government like? And where should she, obviously you're going to say Mystico, but where should she check out in the first weeks of when she's there next January? But first off, what's the government like and is there direct ownership?
Okay, so what you're looking at in Costa Rica is not a similar situation to Mexico. It's not like that. You can actually, you can own property 100% fully titled there. Within the coastlines, though, there is a similarity. They have two different types of property. They have a property called titled, fully titled. They have another type called concession. And the concession land is an attempt to not let all of foreign investors come in and buy up all of the beachfront. Now, here's what I will say, Devin. along your lines is that, yes, the beachfront land I have and the beachfront that we're on at Playa Hermosa, Costa Rica, is fully titled non-concession beachfront land. So we do have that available, but there is two types of land there. There's concession land and there's fully titled. So that is something to watch out for.
Okay, fantastic. And Cindy, who you met from Halifax in the break room, is asking how much is property tax? Obviously, that would depend on where the location is, but how much is property tax? Is there land transfer tax? And can they expect any additional fees when purchasing to consider closing costs in addition to the 20% down that you mentioned?
Yes. Okay. So there really is very little property tax, Cindy. That's one of the hallmark things about a place like that. Your income tax and your property taxes are going to be minuscule, like 1%. Don't quote me on that, but it's going to be, for example, I had 50 hectares of land. I didn't pay my taxes for 6 years. I went and paid my taxes on 50 hecs, and it cost me $900 for 6 years. I was astonished that they charged that little for it. But what they're doing is they're trying to encourage investment on purpose by charging low tax rates, because they believe that foreign investment then encourages business, which then employs Costa Ricans and creates employment and makes them able to tax the Costa Ricans. So you got very low property tax. Land transfer tax, I believe, is non-existent. Additional fees when purchasing, closing costs are going to be almost all legal, and then registration costs in the courts for the property and the land titles is what you're going to end up with. Probably some escrow fees there too. They do a thing like in the States, escrow. So, if we need to send money down there and prove to the lawyers that we have money, we'll sometimes have to do an escrow. And that costs us a little bit of money too, because there's companies that charge for that. My lawyer actually does escrow. She's done it for me several times. We've got a really good lawyer there in Hako.
So you mentioned earlier that there's really three countries, Panama, Belize, Costa Rica, that really are leading the charge when it comes to foreign investment. Great question from Cynthia in the fact that, yes, foreign investment is welcomed, but are they still potentially treated differently than a local resident that would potentially want to be purchasing land?
Well, now, as a foreign investor, what they've done is they've lowered the thresholds for you to become a resident of the country. So you can apply for a residency now at a minimum of $150,000 investment in the country, which can get you a lot in Costa Rica, let me tell you. So with that $150,000, you can bring in 2 container loads of tax-free goods, including a vehicle, household items, everything. Vehicles are particularly expensive. I should warn you about that in Costa Rica. They're heavily taxed. They're about twice as much as they are here for the same car. So just something to know before you go down there. However, it's a small country and there's a lot of used cars, and you can usually get a deal for around $5,000 or $10,000. So
we're going to go back to financing again. So you did talk about mortgages, just to be sure. And I know what after the break, we're going to hear about being able to secure mortgages for 30 years down in the United States. What is the situation in regards to how long you can secure a mortgage for a term down in Costa Rica? Are you, traditionally up in Canada, we're renewing every 5 years usually. What's the situation down in Costa Rica?
It would be exactly the same, 3 to 5 year renewals on a long-term mortgage like that.
Okay. And how long do you amortize the mortgage out for?
You can go up to 30 years at Lefise.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll write one as long as that. Now, the rates don't float or anything. I believe, though, that you may not have to renew that mortgage. There is a product that they've talked about that we were presented that's a 6.5 to start for the first 3 years. Then it's 8.5 for the duration of the mortgage period.
Okay.
Whether that be the next 27 years, that's what they told us. So.
Okay. So obviously we're, people are on here for investing purposes.
Yes.
However, there's, 2 different ways that we can look at purchasing a property. One is for a vacation property where somebody might be using it some of the time or most of the time themselves, but also might be doing a little bit of rental. And then obviously others will be looking at taking advantage of this being a international investment for purposes of revenue generation, either through a long-term rental or Airbnb. What's the status? I mean, obviously it's hit and miss here in Canada and Alberta in regards to some places allow short-term rentals, other places don't. What's the situation when it comes to short-term and long-term rentals in Costa Rica, especially when it's foreign owned?
So really, it's pretty wide open in Costa Rica. There's very few rules there. It's up to you to report everything you do, really. You don't have to really pay any Costa Rican taxes if you're not a resident. You take all the money that you make on, say, a rental. You can keep all of that. There are some property taxes to pay on a property if you own something, but it's usually quite small, less than 2% sort of thing.
You'd mentioned some people that had been involved. You'll have to, hopefully this triggers a memory. We were talking about it earlier this week in regards to some that sold a property and made quite a substantial, I think the number was about $90,000, and they just left it in a Costa Rican bank down there. I mean, is that, can you elaborate a little bit more on what that situation was?
Well, now that's something that we just sort of stumbled across that. Is that we had guys invest in some of the properties that we have, and then what's happened is that there was some profit issued into a Costa Rican bank account, and as far as I can tell, those guys just left their money down there. Now, what you can do, or what the government would like you to do, is send the money back here and pay some taxes on that. But what I've since learned from tax lawyers here and there is that that's up to you to report that. Now, my lawyer he had a bit of a laugh about it. He goes, well, it's not like you're hiding $5 million, $90,000 from one guy. That's not really going to alarm a lot of people. I mean, they would prefer you paid your taxes, and you should. That's what I would say. But what I'm noticing, and I'm not the only one that's noticed it, is there, of course, there's a few people down there who are trying to avoid taxes. And it is one of those places you can do it. I mean, we might as well just get it out in the open. It's just one of those places. You can make American money in Costa Rica, US dollars, and the taxes are ridiculously low. And then it's up to you to decide how you bring it back to Canada and how you pay that. There's a form to claim foreign income. So
now, so the company that you're CEO of is Cardia Eco Developments.
Yes.
Organization, or the development that you're working on, is Mystico. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to focus on the eco part of this, in the fact that you are really working towards and in conjunction with the Costa Rican government. And so I felt this was something important to make sure people understand about. You've talked a lot about the loosey-goosiness of Costa Rica, but when it comes to preserving the environment and being very eco-friendly, they are quite rigid. And so I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that from a Costa Rican government standpoint, and how you're moving with that, with the government, to make sure that the development you're working on is eco-friendly.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I first started in Costa Rica, we were doing farming and we were doing eco-friendly sort of activities, right? And so, when we started doing development, and it was sort of happenstance that we got involved with these guys, but I am involved with Cardia Eco Developments quite extensively. And what happened was we just found a really good fit with Mystico. Mystico is so close to the ocean. In Costa Rica, I don't know if everybody knows, but the one big thing they're all about is, eco sustainability. They don't like to ruin their rivers. They don't like to pollute anything. They don't like to kill the animals. They really don't like that kind of stuff. So what we've done is, we had that attitude already, and we found a willing partner in Mystico, because this is a sensitive area and they've had to jump through some serious hoops, and the permitting takes forever to permit a development this extensive, that close to the ocean. As you can see in that one photo, we ride our bicycles down that one road routinely down to the ocean. Now we have a bunch of condos, if you can see on the main development map there, that are going in at the ocean as well. So there's two oceanfront condo developments. There's the Mystico one, and then there's the one that we have that's ready to go too. So yes, this is Mystico. We have several lots in a partnership with these guys. It's an eco development. The rivers, the water management is done really responsibly. What it's led to is a thriving ecosystem within the development itself. We've got lizards and birds. We've got all the wildlife and fish. There's even some alligators over there, but there's some gates holding them back from the lakes, but there's some around the perimeter of the area. They're not a real threat or anything, but the water flows freely and freshly through those lakes. There's no stagnants. And what's happening is what you're seeing there in those photos is sort of the middle area of Mystico, sort of a phase one of Los Lagos. What's going to happen in the ensuing few months, and it's already begun, is some of the stuff, if you're looking at that master plan on that picture there, is that some of the stuff to the left side of the development's going to start coming together now. A lot of those lakes and things that you see down there. So I will say this was ex-rice paddy. Everybody should know that. And that's why there's so many lakes and it's so extensive that they've treated the water management this way. The natural river systems were not touched. And so through those stringent standards, we've sort of been forced to comply heavily with their environmental needs in Costa Rica. It's a beautiful place for that. They really love that stuff. And they're a real leader as a small country. I mean, we could do a lot better job, more like them.
So obviously, over the course of the 10 years that you've been working towards being involved in this project, it takes a tremendous entrepreneurial spirit. This event is full of entrepreneurial minded people that
Sure.
sometimes like to do this on their own. So my question is, how would someone that would like to go down and maybe do their own development, what would you recommend? What are a few tips for them to come down to any Central American country and potentially buy a plot of land and do a project?
I would say get a really good lawyer. It's the truth, though. I have two, actually. I have two lawyers.
And
We've been through.
Obviously, I'm laughing because that probably would be the advice for every situation.
Well, it would be, but
tell us a bit of why that would be. What's happened in your journey over the course of the past little bit that would be, obviously important to develop. And first off, you're probably looking to somebody that can speak Spanish and English.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that be careful where you choose it. Make sure of the sort of the ecology of the area and where it is and things like that. The other thing you got to worry about a lot in these countries, all kidding aside with the lawyers, is things like, you got to worry about where you're going to get your fresh water. Like Costa Rica's got a lot of fresh water. And I mean, I've been drinking it there out of the tap since day one, 10 years ago. Never had a problem with it. They have an abundance of it. But to actually get it to your development is not always that easy, because you're going to have to drill a well, which you're going to have to get a permit for. There's the other problem with electricity. We have electricity is readily available here and it's fairly cheap. In a place like Costa Rica, it's actually a little harder to get to, and it's about twice as much money. And, like we're building these condos, for example, we have to buy our own transformer. We don't have the power company doing that for us. So that's going to cost us $10,000, for example. And it's those kind of hidden costs, the things that we're maybe used to being picked up or part of the deal that we've learned, Devin, just like the lawyer thing, I guess. We've learned these things are the hard things to do, not just in Costa Rica, but I have a feeling, and I know because I have a buddy who has some property in Belize, Devin, actually, that he's gone through similar experiences just with stuff like that. The infrastructure in a place like that isn't quite as buttoned down as it is here. However, in Mystico, that's exactly what we have here. It's exactly what we expect from an infrastructure standpoint, which makes it unique, because you don't really see that often here to this level of standard for the price you can get it at. So
okay. I did want to talk a little bit more just in regards to with somebody looking to come down to Costa Rica. There was one of the questions about where are good places to invest in Costa Rica. Obviously, you're down in the southern Pacific area, a small city called Jaco. What are other regions in Costa Rica that would be areas that people, if they're looking to go to Costa Rica to check things out? Because I think that was, stealing your thunder here, but I think you obviously, one of the big things you're going to leave everybody with is you need to go down to Costa Rica or wherever, any Central American or place internationally that you're looking to invest, you need to go there.
Yeah.
What are 3 or 4 other areas in Costa Rica that you know are hotspots that somebody would be potentially needing to check out if they are looking at investing in Costa Rica?
Well, I think when you're going to invest in a place like this, I think you got to really look at why you're doing it. I mean, we've ran into some people that, it's beautiful everywhere in Costa Rica and throughout Central America. It's jungles, it's waterfalls and volcanoes and all those different things. So, if you want to be a farmer guy that's really into solitude and you want a couple acres of land, you can buy that throughout Central America for fairly inexpensive. I mean, you can get that kind of thing for under $100,000 quite easily. But if you're into having a rental and a revenue property or something that's going to gain a little bit of value, then you got to look at location. And I mean, if you get too far away, just like anywhere else in Costa Rica or, throughout Central America, Panama or Belize, that the further you are away from a town that's got sort of the services, medical, good shopping, all the things you're going to need, the less expensive the properties are going to be. So I would say other areas in Costa Rica, I mean, obviously I talk about the area that I'm talking about because it is sort of the central sort of tourist area of the country. Jaco, Playa Hermosa, it's close to the city. If you want a property that's going to rent well and appreciate well, that's a good place because not only do the people from the city go there, but also the tourists come there because it's close. But other places that are really nice in Costa Rica that you should really check out are, for example, Manuel Antonio National Park, and that whole area down there, it's called Quepos. Beautiful. And there's properties down there too. It's further from the city, but it's got the most beautiful national park in Central America, one of the most beautiful in the world. So there's a lot of reasons that people would want to go down there. Another one is called Monteverde. Monteverde is not even close to the ocean. It's right in the middle of the country, but it's so beautiful up in the cloud forest area there with the volcanoes and stuff that what you do is you get away from the ocean and you still find a place that's really, really desirable, So, another place down south is Dominical, beautiful beaches again. But again, in the middle of the country, you've got the area around San Jose where you can get a lot of really good deals on condos and houses. It's a beautiful city with great skylines, settled right up in the mountains with volcanoes around it,
So Al, thank you. So we are going to get close to wrapping up. Some of the questions are about your property specific. We'll get to that in a second here, but I did see another question here. What's the crime rate like? I guess we'll talk, if you're able to talk Costa Rica in general, great, but obviously you're going to know about the Jaco Mystico area better. What can you talk about that?
Well, again, you're going to find that Costa Rica is probably a pretty shining light when it comes to the crime rate compared to its neighbors there. It is sort of the Switzerland of Central America as they sort of see themselves there. They don't have a standing army, but it's different than we're used to too. I mean, if you're going to look at a little bit of potential of petty crime in a place like Costa Rica, there's not as much police. So you got to watch out for yourself. But, on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say we've got, drug gangs running around Mexico being sort of and holding up hospitals being a 10, and then petty crime and everything being right down at the 1 level. I would say on the scale of Costa Rica is about a 3, when it comes to the crime. It probably has about as much crime as a place like Calgary and Edmonton. There's some vice. There's a little bit of people getting ripped off, and there's not many guns in Costa Rica, thankfully. They don't seem to have a real problem with that. So
we're at our time. Al, just while I'm in here, if you wouldn't mind in the chat box putting in your contact information.
Yeah.
What you're seeing here on the screen is the first part of a presentation for Mystico. And so if anybody would like to, I am seeing that there is there's some questions about just more information desired on the Mystico project down in the Southern Pacific, that if you would like to see this presentation in its entirety, that you reach out to Al. He's put his email and his phone number there. You can also reach him through WhatsApp. So again, Al, just say any quick parting words in regards to Costa Rica, and then we'll wrap up.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I can't tell you guys how much I appreciate I've had the chance to sit and chat with you. And I can't stress enough what Devin said earlier is if you can get down there, I'm down there quite a bit, and I mean, I'll tell you everything about where we're at. The hotels. Come down and have a look around. It's just a quick day. I'll run you out there. We can go have some lunch, and you can have a vacation after that. It is a great place to vacation. So, I'm down there. I'm going down there in July, but I think pretty much the entire winter. So November, December, January, February, March, April. We're going to be in a building phase with everything that we're doing down there, and we'd love to see you. I really would. And if you want to invest, or you want to look at a mortgage, or you want to get involved in the project, or you want to get involved in land, all of that stuff's available. We do custom builds, everything like that. So
Awesome. Thank you so much. Rebecca, back to you.
Awesome. Al, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, your knowledge, your expertise. Sounds like you're working on some really exciting stuff down there.